it's not about your paper. Don't get afraid about it. It's about your CV, which says that you are artistic, non-artistic duo. And that's, from one side, it has a simple explanation, of course. Sometimes we do art, sometimes we don't. But on the other side, it opens a question of this contemporary art discussion, which was also a topic of your paper. So is the art the main fracture, the main tool to do this operation of opening into the visible what was invisible and so on? Or is there something else? Art and non-art. Does this mean that there are other, I would say, approaches, other tools which might be better than art to achieve emancipation? You have your doubts.
It's a very hard question.
Yeah, maybe the key thing is that the art is not so much important, and while looking at the whole picture of the existing, I think that this paradigm of art is really marginal one. It's like it could be, but it's not of the biggest importance.
Yep. From my point of view, the two of us, an artistic, non-artistic duo, we start, I think in one part it's pragmatic definition, and in another part it's more ideological definition. This pragmatic is that we not operate only as artists, so we do also other things, and we try to combine everything. This is pragmatic part, and ideological part is what Nenad opens in a way. We are not sure that art is enough, and that's why we speak also about the practices who are on the borders, in a way, of art and non-art. And also this, our name, kitsch, originates from something which is not supposed to be art. It's a kitsch. It's not, you know, it's not something which should be in a canon of accepted, institutionalized, and serious art. And that's why we also started with this name, kitsch, to be, you know, opening this border situation. So I think, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, the question was not meant just for your practice, of course. It's for this ambiguous contemporary arts position. Is it a position which still, like autonomy of art, like pluralism, like even aesthetic regime still applies? So, please.
But may I add some? No. No, I wanted to add this paradox, which is very important, which you open now in this question, which is also a paradox that we find it in Jacques Rancière philosophy. This is the paradox of contemporary artists who, in this neoliberal situation, want to fill the empty space of politics, which politics cannot fill anymore, and then artists is engaged, trying to open new forms, trying to speak on the conferences, on roundtable debates. So artist is not pure artist anymore, but it's a scientist, is activist, is a militant, and this opens new questions about the position of art and the possibilities of art, and also the aim of art, because when we speak about critical, so-called critical, political, engaged art, the aim is like, okay, let's say to change the world, but how can art do that? That is the question.
I would think also for the kitsch, or maybe for all this question about the films, mostly the documentaries about the resistance. So the documentaries which takes part during the resistance, for instance, films of Sylvain Georges, which we're going to see tonight in Cinematheque, or films back in '68, for instance, Newsreels, movements films in USA, and things going on during in Paris in '68 and so on. So are those films already the part of aesthetization, interpretation, or they are part of the movement itself? Are there resistance potential kind of institutionalized already, or are they part of the resistance? Thank you.
I want to start, I think it's for all of you.
Can you give me some more point? I lost the point of your question, sorry. Because you mentioned one movie and I wasn't so focused.
For instance, in Slovenia was like Bojza, film Bojza, about the Occupy movement in few years ago, or the newsreel films, documentaries in USA in '68 about which were part of the demonstrations against the Vietnam War, or documentaries in '68, as I said, in Paris, in France, collective documentaries and things like this. Films which are taking part during the resistant movements. The question is, are they part of the movement or already the aesthetization and institutionalization interpretation of the art?
Well, I can try to answer you with my dealing with art. So I'm dealing with this community art projects where this documentary level of process is very, let's say, important, and which is like kind of residue of the whole process. These community artists are always in kind of ambiguous position, I would say. In one hand, we have artwork, like in my case, ecological community work, and on the other hand, exhibition as kind of aesthetic ecological forum. I don't know, it's not the situation probably that you would like to connect with documentary movies, but I can try to answer you with this situation because I actually explored this topic that I presented also as curator who is working together with community artists in one local milieu here in Slovenia. So, and we have this kind of discrepancy how to work only with the people on location without secondary public, and how to present, and then again the question how not to be part of the spectacle, like was the question also of kitsch tandem. So how to make something productive, subversive, important for local community, and not to be the part of spectacular representation in art institution. I don't know if I answer your question, but I try to illustrate my intention to dealing with this topic and to have this tension. For example, we in the group with artists, we didn't have kind of consensus. Should we put our names of all participated artists, and so on. So how to keep the kind of tension alive during the project.
I would say on the topic documentary films between institution and resistant movement, the importance, I would say maybe probably somewhere in between. It depends on the distribution channels. But I would say they are very important in the sense of triggering certain kind of oppositional, standpoints that are maybe also part of the movement. And in particular, they are important because of these distribution channels, which can reach certain public, which might not get informed if only getting some other information. So in this sense, I think they're very important. But it's also, we also have to be aware that there are certain manipulations also at work. I mean, something that yesterday's presenter Steven was talking about what was discussed by the structuralists and post-structuralists, the danger of the so-called of the construction of the text. I mean, also documentary film could also be such a construction, and we have to be aware of that.
I would like to add, I think, for documentary movies, but also for the art as such, I think, who is flirting with movements or activism and so on. I think for me it's important the mode of production of such a movie, if we speak about documentary movies now. If you speak about some emancipatory politics, but within your own mode of production you are exploiting your collaborators and also people who are in the movie, for example, then I cannot see how can it be emancipatory art or emancipatory documentary film. It can be informative, of course, like Boyza, for example, but we can also open the question how many damage this film causes for the movement itself. So it's, I think you always have to re-question your own position as an artist, as a creator, whether you're not perpetuating the very problems that you're criticized declaratively in your artwork.
I have a question for Polona. I was wondering if you have any thoughts on the relation between this the bio art, which experiments with genetics, and this the wolf man that will be created and stuff. The relation of this to the discourse of bioethics, which is something very important today. I mean, it has a dominant presence in talking about genetics and biotechnology. So, which tries to kind of limit the possibilities that are opened up by scientific practices. So, I was wondering if you have any thoughts on the relation between these two practices or discourses.
So what exactly the question is, if there are any relations between the...
Yeah, so what does bioart think of bioethics?
I would say that these are two very different things, and I would agree with you, what you already connotated, suggested, that the bioethics is something that is actually more or less ideology. It's a moral police, and it's actually judging, what is allowed to take place and what's not. Maybe we are lucky in Slovenian, in this region, because Kapelica Gallery, in particular, is a very liberal place for, really allowing people to do things that are, so to say, generally not allowed. I mean, not always, but quite often. But then, in the case, this is still a relevant question, because if you do a kind of manipulation that you really have to launch a whole biotechnological laboratory and a team that also has to be prepared, and you need certain material and so on, that cannot be done without the institution, meaning that if you do it under the cover of an institution which has an allowance to work on such kind of experimentations, then you also have to get an approval of the ethical committee. And the ethical committee that we have in Slovenia is on a state level, so this is not everywhere the same. For instance, in Serbia, there is ethical committee which is on the side of the university, so we have it on a state level, and it's actually ethical committee for medical research, meaning that it's also directed to the question of medical experimentation, or experimentation that is meant for medical applications, meaning that there is no other committee. And then this is opening a discussion that we quite often have in the circle of arts between the curators, artists, and so on. So, and also the biotechnologists that we collaborate with, who want to have, not only want to have to have everything, I'm not exactly sure how Maya plans to do that, that thing, but for projects that require ethical approval, this is, it's done as it should be done. Just that, sometimes also the committee is then in a problem because then they decide about what is allowed to be done in the field of arts, and they say we're not competent to judge about that. So it's a complicated issue, actually.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, this is for the artistic, non-artistic duo again. I was just wondering what you would say to the following. I mean, thanks for your paper. It was very complex, and I'm not like trying to encapsulate it in this question. But in actually this year, Frederick Jameson published a paper called "The Aesthetics of Singularity," and he describes in that the sort of logic of the derivatives market and so on as in a way which can be described very much in terms of in the terms that you were using also to talk about art project as being anti-systemic, as sort of being a singularity which escapes the normal channels of institutionalization and so on and so forth, and communication. So, for example, in some of these big projects, you have a whole series of international legal money flows and so on that just come together at very singular, punctual points, such that the form of these derivatives markets sometimes can be described or sounds very similar to the kind of singularity of artistic form that a lot of people describe as being sort of inherently subversive. I was just wondering what you'd say to that.
Can you rephrase the question, please?
Yeah, it's just the form of description as a kind of singularity which kind of escapes systemic constraints. Can also be, you can also use this kind of language to describe sort of derivatives markets and the sort of ways in which certain projects come together at an international level involving multiple actors, money flows, different kinds of legal systems, which really create singular configurations, which then are just for this punctual moment, and then they disappear again. They're also very ephemeral and so on.
How you mean they have subversive effect?
No, I'm not saying they do have subversive effects, obviously. But the language is very similar, that's all I wanted to say, yeah. And how, how would you posit the difference between sort of the artistic level there and the level of the derivatives market?
Difference between artistic
derivatives market. The difference between
I don't think really that I understand
Can somebody
this.
else tell us?
That was the point, no? And the kind of singular events that in the market fluctuation of capital impact political and social reality, and the valuation of contemporary art system is pretty much integrated into these fluctuations of art of value.
It's very obvious, but it's like part of the whole picture. But I don't know how to comment further on this, because it's like a starting point actually. This situation, of course, for a long time it is nothing new now. Maybe what is now new is the new attempts to again recuperate everything that is resisting. So it's going on and on from the part of the system as such. So yeah, it's like maybe the focus now is on militarization of the whole system, including the art system, and yeah, this is to be discussed, and yeah, in the future.
You will be at the end, okay? Or you want to intervene now?
I don't know. It's not a problem. No, you took much about No, I had, just two questions, about the image that we have in front of us, the survival kit for Anthropocene, because of course, it reminds us of some forms of art, or some forms of kits, made in another context. I am thinking, for instance, of the vehicle for the homeless made by Krzysztof Wodiszko, so 20 years before, So my point is, are we in the same kind, in the same kind, of art, some kind of art, just trying to invent, some forms of art, but are at the same time a kind of utility, in social life or utility in life. So what's the difference between this kit, and all the inventions, of artists like Krzysztof Wodiszko, 20 or 30 years before, and second, this also his survival kit makes me think, of a humoristic drawing, that was published, recently, and in an American newspaper. It's in a classroom, and probably you saw it on Facebook, like I did, and so there is a teacher in the classroom, asking the children, what do you want to be when you are adults, and there is the end of a black child, who just answers so the question, what do you want to be, and he says alive. So my point, about this, is about the very question of survival, and also about, because does it mean that the difference of ecological art, of this kind of bio art, is that it cares for survival, but what kinds of survival, because, as we know in Paris, we have this big conference about survival for the humankind, and of course, 2 weeks ago, we were faced with another problem of survival and violence. So what is the situation, let us say, of an art thought in the context of apocalypse, and an art thought in the context of social violence?
Thank you for these two questions. The first one thing that actually was my starting point for this small research was actually how to somehow emphasize the very significance of this kind of art that is produced, in these days. I would say it somehow started in 2000, and then since 2010 we have projects like this and the ones that I showed. In reference to this so-called biotechnological art, in the 80s there was a question of life which was related to computer technologies. So what is life in that sense, and artificial life and artificial intelligence? And then in 2000, actually, bioart connected with regenerative medicine, with tissue engineering, and the artists really started to practice these biotechnological procedures. And there was a big difference between what they were doing, they started to do, and between what, for instance, when Dali was discussing the question of genetics, what does it mean for our society and so on. I think there is a really big difference when you really include biotechnological technologies into your artistic project, or so to say program, because you face with several things that you would maybe ignore if you would just discuss it generally. And also what you get an output which is, I would say, very strong in the sense of enabling an affected experience by the audience, which is something pretty different than what people get if they just get some populistic descriptions in some articles or public discussions and so on. So in this sense, you know, the artist can do certain kind of aesthetic situations in which the people could be faced directly with what's going on. But in this case, it's also a certain, okay, I emphasize this aspect of tactical media, which is the aim of which is to somehow stimulate and give people a chance to be, not to be creative in this general sense, but to be innovative and to find new ways, alternative ways of using technologies, not only high technologies, very sophisticated technologies, but also simple things to maybe create a sort of unique life or maybe alternative life. You know, there are projects that are really interested into building up complex technologies similar to internet, which would function alternatively to the internet. So in that sense, I would say that I think it's very relevant that you have, maybe this project is not such an example of that, because it's more or less a kit, it's something practical, and it's something that Marika came to from her, you know, various discussions of this utilitarian society, the society which really dictates what we are doing, but also what we are serving to ideologists, and you know, and in that sense, it's a kind of escape, some kind of an offer of alternative doing, alternative technologies, alternative utilitarianism, so to say. And the second question, survival, what kind of survival? Of course, I didn't mention because I thought it's kind of obvious. It's a certain irony in that. So it's not a survival in the context of the apocalyptic society, or if we want to migrate to another planet, what kind of form should a human have to be able to do it and to colonize another planet then, so on. It's actually an irony, but which tells us a lot about the human objectives, objectives to take care of the survival of human species. So one thing that Marika is also very interested in is the critique of anthropocentrism. So the critique of anthropocentrism, putting the human always in the middle, in the central focus, and always serving the interest of a human by, you know, using other species and so on. So in that sense, what they are doing, they are enforcing that aim which is already present in the civilization, and they are with this enforcing, they are making it funny in the sense. So I would also say that maybe they come, you know, with this Humalga, that project is maybe even more radical. They are, or Maya's yogurt, which proposes actually cannibalism for the sake of the human survival. So these are kind of radical propositions, but which, when you go deeper into that, you actually see that they address the very logic of the system and how it works today. So, yeah, of course, there are differences in these survivals, and also the cave paintings addressed was totally different kind of survival. But what came to my mind is that actually, if this was the man before the Anthropocene, which is discussed in all this project, the era when we influence the ecosystem so much that actually we cannot save it anymore. We cannot step forward, and we are again in a way endangered by the whole biological or natural system, so to say. So there is this connection that I liked with the caves, and I think it's worth to go deeper. I don't know if I answered your. Thank you.
Anybody else? You wanted to enter there. Okay.
Well, I have a comment about the kind of art you're describing. I cannot help but question the kind of sort of lack of practice, in a sense, because I see this kind of tactical art or bio art is mainly is a kind of uses rhetoric. It's a rhetorical art, but in a practical sense, it's really hard to distinguish the kind of hacking, do-it-yourself approach from the kind of simple entrepreneurship, do-it-yourself entrepreneurship. It's kind of, it's easily, if you would miss the kind of rhetorical ideological layer behind it, it just looks like some kind of Kickstarter art. And I find it's kind of the rhetorics of kind of irony, which it sort of mistakes for critique, or the rhetorics of parody has shown itself not as very effective since 1990s, when the concept of tactical media was kind of seemed more emancipatory with the internet, which since then has been sort of thoroughly commodified and instrumentalized. So I kind of fail to see how the concept of tactical media today can still be effective or relevant since all of its kind of techniques and practices have been so commodified, so instrumentalized. So what we're left with is a kind of rhetorics of irony and parody, which is extremely superficial in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is an important point that should be, studied or discussed more deeply. So this is what I showed, the Ars Electronica, the Open City Lab. This, I would say, is really a kind of a culmination of that kind of do-it-yourself approach. There was a whole, really big hole full of these points where you could get these workshops, or even without workshops, you could do this do-it-yourself things in a different manner. So I would say that is a kind of culmination of that, which is a fashion, this do-it-yourself approach. But I would say we really need to differentiate between what we have here and that kind of approaches, which I think this could be separately discussed. I didn't really go deeper into that, but it's a kind of giving people a chance to be more creative and so on, which is again the logic and ideology of the dominant ideology. But in that sense, I would say what you're saying, it's a rhetoric. I would say the very important thing is the tradition of this critical theory of society, this believing in the critical and emancipatory in a way, but not in such a not in such direct way, of the critical job that actually artworks take. And in all that cases that I showed, a very important aspect is also that that aesthetic outcome, so to say, the installations that these artists do and the outputs. For instance, this is maybe a little bit different, but still, this kit is very nicely done. It's the aesthetic outcomes that these artists do is also very, very important in the communication with the audience, and how it actually addresses the things that are there. Well, in this case, actually, that is not that relevant. It's only important that people do experiment, and actually what they do is what the system or platform enables there from point to point. But yeah, thank you for the comment.
I would like to add something, thinking of the various questions here, and those projects, like many other projects, which are somehow integrated in the art system. What is the most important somehow for me is to have in mind that those are kind of bubbles which are self-sufficient somehow because of the mode of production that they are practicing. So we have a lot of closed bubbles, and the name project is a very good name for it, because then we have a network, somehow network of these projects which are presented around at the different presentation points in galleries, museums and festivals. And then it's very obvious that this network of bubbles is supporting the the existing condition. So when we are thinking also about the migration, for instance, in this context, because it's very popular now to deal with migration in art also, and identity, etc. I think that we have to have in mind that, okay, it's very, I think, it's very challenging to think about migration to another planet, and it's totally, of course, it's nothing wrong with it, on the contrary, but we have to have in mind that the key question now is, are you in position to migrate at all today? Because we are living surrounded by the barbed wire, for instance, here, and I think that this has to be all the time here with us when we are thinking of art, because then this process of thinking and creating of art gets another dimension which is necessary. So yeah, this is the starting point for me to deal and think of art.
Yes, I have a question for Mojca. In this paper, there is something which was very interesting for me, because you're saying, and if you can say a little bit more about that, when you're writing about danger of instrumentalization of participatory art, and can you just say something about that, which is a biggest, biggest dangers? Is just instrumentalization because the state is falling apart, or what are other also maybe dangers of instrumentalization?
Thank you for this question. Actually, my starting point was a critique of Jacques Rancière about this kind of art. So this danger that when artist is dealing with these social bonds which are inoperative in this neoliberal system, so then this political and aesthetical potential is losing itself in ethics. So this danger is here, like in this actual situation where the question of welfare, so social security on national systemic level is disrupted, and so art state give up about dealing with these social problems. So and then art is in this view instrumentalized, because is taking role of social dealing with social bonds, which should be also the task of state, of social workers, and so on. So this is the point of critique, as I understand this danger of instrumentalization of community art. I don't know, do you have maybe some other idea? So this was that. So this is like one kind of ethical issue now, which should be political and aesthetical. This is that I take off from this Jacques Rancière's point of paradoxes about politics of aesthetics. Yeah, so I use this concept. I don't know if I answer to you.
Okay, thank you. Darko.
Thank you. Well, I'd just like to return to a little bit more general level of concepts of politics, and to illustrate the problem, I would remind us about a discussion which is, I think, now slowly nearing its end, and it was quite widespread among different theorists and political activists and whatever, and it is expressed in an opposition between so-called redistribution and recognition. So you have the politics of recognition, were the politics that mobilized all sorts of social resources, I mean like minorities, feminists, gays, single mothers, whatever, and that what was in certain, how to say, in certain circles of participants in intellectual and artistic and also debates, the politics of recognition was quite productive. It produced many, I don't know, hundreds of artistic interventions and so on. But on the other hand, it was also an object of criticism because it sort of cohabitated with the neoliberal system. So in this politics of recognition, we had practices which produced artifacts and so on, which were, let's say in Marcuse's words, absorbed, or you use the term instrumentalized and so on. Well, what I think is that that this very opposition between redistribution and recognition, these two types of politics, maybe just to explain that the politics of redistribution is based on the class paradigm, of course, the class opposition paradigm. So what I think is that we should invent a way how to come out of this trap of this opposition. I think we should look for a theory which will transport us to, how to say, to a social space where we can overcome this problem, how to say. And that's, I don't know, it is also the question for artistic invention. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for this comment. Well, I don't have yet, some exact answer to this. This is, I think, a very valuable proposition, so I will study in this direction, so thank you.
I would like to comment. I think that, as a matter of fact, we have a person in the room who wrote about this, maybe he will speak later about that, but what I would like to comment is that when we speak about this, when you said recognition politics, it's in a way, I think, identitarian politics, identitarian approach, which acts in the name of some kind of marginalized groups and recognize them as a part of the community, but this is, of course, not emancipatory politics, because then you have twofold process of those who can recognize somebody if they want, of course, and tolerate them, and this is also the position of hierarchy. But on the other hand, also this redistribution politics, as you said, that is a class paradigm, but this is also operating with identitarian signifiers of proletarians and rulers and capitalists. So we also have this theory of Balibar, who also speak about the problems of Marxist theory as identitarian theory, because the proletariat is identity par excellence. But I think that if we want to overcome this dualistic approach of identitarian politics, for me it's very inspirative, the Rancière's idea of radical politics as the process of desidentification and declassification. So to think critically about identity, who is always a process of identification. Actually, it's always a twofold, ambiguous process. It's never closed. We are never closed in one identity, but we are many of them, and if we claim on the streets that we are all Roma people or women or I don't know, migrants, for example, from Syria today, which nobody is doing actually, or I mean a small group of people. So I think this is the way to, you know, to abolish your own privileged position and privileged identity, and then to include all the others in a way, not from the position of hierarchy, but not because you can, but because you must, because it's your political responsibility, not your goodwill, I think. So.
I don't remember exactly what I wanted to say, but just because my text about relational art, you know, was more or less, you know, of course, referred to, you know, also through the interpretation of Claire Bishop, you know. I would just say that my main point is not instrumentalization, and I think that sometimes there is some kind of prohibitive, you know, effect of this word, instrumentalization, fear for instrumentalization, you know, things like this, you know. No, my point about rational art, you know, rational aesthetics, you know, was perhaps a bit different, you know, because I was struck, you know, in the definition of rational art by that attempt to make a kind of equivalence between a new status of art and a politicization of art, you know. So the argument of Nicolas Bourriot was, you know, now art doesn't make any more things, works, objects, but only relations, you know. And with the idea that since art now is producing relations, you know, whereas art has become politics, you know. And in my and so it is a good thing, but it's a good thing to make no things, no works, no spectacle, etc., you know. And my point is that perhaps aesthetic dissensus means that, well, you also produce things, objects, performances, you know, which are the kind of power of dissensus also, but because they are not, you know, direct, you know, relations, direct intervention, you know, but something that in front of which, well, there are still spectators, you know, asking themselves, what does it mean? What can I do with this? And so on. So my point was rather about this kind of abolition, you know, of the aesthetic distance, with the idea that, well, the aesthetic distance can be, you know, can be a mediation for politics, you know, and that was my point. So, and also about instrumentalization, you know, well, of course, when there is a space created for some kind of art, you can always say, oh, it's dangerous. No, everything, there is danger everywhere anyway, you know, there is danger in a kind of practice, in a form of art, okay, but also the danger is on both sides, so perhaps we should not be so much frightened, you know, with the danger, just kind of comment. What was at stake behind my intervention about rational art?
Does anybody want to extend this comment? Okay. Anybody else? It seems that we arrived at the final ceremony of this conference. There are so many co-organizers that I'm afraid that I might, you know, forget somebody or some institution of all the 7 who made all these events possible. But first I would like, of course, because you are here at Atrium, in connection with AZIL bookshop and the Institute of Philosophy, thank to all them, and also especially thanks to people who are here to enable that we hear each other and that everything functions. Thank you. And without mentioning all the institutions, I would also like to thank you, Rok and Amelia, to do, together with Cyril Oberstar, who was in charge of this place, all this big organizing effort. Of course, also all the others who were involved, like Book Fair and Cankarjev Dom and Kinoteka and so on. But this conference was, I would say, organized by you. And finally, this is not over. the conference is over, but this afternoon we have 2 projections of 2 films at Kinoteka, where some of you were present maybe yesterday. So it is at 6 o'clock, Sylvain Georges, and at 8 o'clock, Dziga Vertou. I think it's the same as yesterday, that participants of this conference come there and they will see you, Amelia Kreiger, and...
Just go and the ticket office.
Okay.
Your tickets there.
Okay.
I will not take care about your tickets.
Okay. So you know how to do that, you don't need any support and help for that. Thank you. And of course, at the end, I have to say that we read, we study, and we discuss the work of Jacques Rancière, and we would read, study, and discuss his work even without his presence, which we do, of course. But to have you present, Jacques Rancière, here with us all these days, and also at the conference, and with your interventions, comments, and questions, I think it was a privilege really to have it, to organize it, and it was also a pleasure. I hope that it was a pleasure also on your side. It was a lot of work to do, of course, an effort for 4 days, I would say. So thank you very much. And of course, at the end, I'm asking you, do you want to say something as your final word about this conference?
No, I just want to, of course, to thank everybody, all the organizer and all the persons, who intervened so during those 2 days, and I think it was good because people did not feel, obliged to say Rancière is right, Rancière is wrong for this or that reason, but try to say something which is related to what I wrote, or related to their own understanding of what I wrote, but could have some kind of relevance, in relation to what I tried to do. And of course, I think it's a good thing, I remind you what I very often say, and of course it can become boring for you, but I must remind it, any time, but I never wrote a theory of art or a theory of politics. Just try to think of the evolutions, not only of art, but what is called art, and what I think it was interesting, precisely, notably today, because the question is about what is art today, what kind of things, are in the field of art today, and how does it urge us, it prompts us to rethink art, and of course it was the beginning of a discussion, and the discussion will follow, certainly will go on, and so thank you to the organizers, to Amelia, to Rock, to Levecraft, to everybody for making this discussion possible, and of course to all the speakers. So that was, I think, a nice experience for me, and so. Thank you and goodbye to everybody. Oh, not goodbye because I must still be there. I forgot tonight. Okay, thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think this was the final applause of this conference. Of course, the organizers have a very good intention to publish your texts and your interventions, and we will get in touch when we'll be ready after all the efforts of this week to continue. Thank you very much.